I wasn't sick. They made me believe I was. Now I know why I couldn't eat. I can't eat. That's the simple truth. To most people, that probably sounds impossible. Ridiculous, even. Because eating isn't just fuel. It's culture, celebration, comfort. It's where people laugh over breakfast, talk through lunch, and celebrate at dinner. But for me, it's always been different. Always complicated. My name's Jasper Ward. Born and raised by a single mom in a small port town on the Oregon coast. She worked double shifts, minimum wage jobs, scraped together what she could. And somehow, through all that, she kept me alive. Which wasn't easy. Because I wasn't just a sickly kid. I had a rare condition. Or so they said. The diagnosis changed over the years, but the one that stuck longest was something called achalasia. It meant I couldn't swallow food, not like most people do. Solid food? Forget it. I couldn't even sip a glass of cold water without my throat locking up like a bear trap. My mom, ever the optimist, had a name for it. Royal throat, she called it. Just like kings and queens in the old days, too pampered to feed themselves. It made me smile, even if I didn't really believe it. Truth is, I survived by pureeing everything I ate and sending it down a feeding tube. I could chew for taste, sort of, but if I tried to swallow something solid, I'd end up in the ER. So I didn't. I learned to live around it. To hide it. I avoided school lunchrooms, ducking into side halls to sip thickened juice in peace. On Halloween, I still went door to door, but every bit of candy I got went to friends. That's how I earned my nickname. Truffle Pig, my friend Caleb used to say. You sniff out all the good stuff, but can't eat any yourself. That name stuck. Eventually it became Truffles, then Ruffles, then just Rough. And the weird thing is, I didn't mind. They said it with affection, like I was part of the crew, just playing a different role. By the time I was 18, I had learned how to survive in a world that revolved around taste, texture, and smell. All the things I wasn't allowed to fully experience. I got a job working the docks, helping unload seafood. Strong back, empty stomach. I fit right in. Later, I signed on full-time with a crab boat that worked the northern coast. The job was hard but honest. Cold mornings, sore shoulders, and the kind of silence you only hear out at sea. I didn't get seasick, probably a perk of having a stomach that rarely did any real work. I became the designated driver on every night out. I'd sit at the bar while my crew threw back beers and bourbon, while I quietly sipped tap water. I'd eye the bowl of salted cashews in the center of the table and imagine myself diving in, crunching, chewing, living. But I couldn't. Not without risking my life. Truffle Pig, Truffle Pig. Look, but don't taste. Then came the accident. It was early May. I was still dealing with my mom's passing a few weeks earlier. Cancer, slow and cruel. I'd said goodbye in a quiet hospital room, buried her in a coastal cemetery, and packed up our little rental house alone. They offered me time off. I refused. Routine was survival. So I kept moving. Until I didn't. I was driving down the I-5 like I'd done 1,000 times before, maybe distracted, maybe just exhausted. Then, a sudden jolt. A sound like steel folding. And then, darkness. When I came to, I was in a neck brace, staring at the peeling ceiling tiles of a hospital ER. They told me I was lucky. A few surface injuries. One fractured leg. The other driver walked away without a scratch. But I had to be cut out of the wreck like a sardine from a can. They ran all the usual scans. X-rays. Blood work. Full body checks to make sure there was no internal bleeding. I didn't care about any of it. I just wanted to get out. Until one conversation changed everything. It was the discharge day. The doctor, a woman named Dr. Shreya Patel, came in with a clipboard and a calm voice. You're healing well, she said. No complications. We'll get you fitted for a walking boot before you leave. I nodded, then asked the question that had been quietly gnawing at me. What about my throat? Do I need to change anything with how I eat? She blinked. What do you mean? I have inoperable achalasia, I said. It should be in my file. She looked down, then back up. You don't have achalasia. I laughed. It wasn't funny, but I didn't know what else to do. No, I've had it since I was a baby. Feeding tube. Pureed diet. My throat muscles don't work properly. Dr. Patel narrowed her eyes and scrolled through her tablet. There's no record of that. Not in your files. Not in any of your scans. She turned the screen around, showed me my esophagus, trachea, muscle wall. All normal. Perfect, even. Your throat is fully functional. Honestly, healthier than most men your age. I stared at the images, not understanding. No signs of atrophy. No sign of lifelong muscle decay. No trauma. No diagnosis. Just a blank slate where my entire life had been written. I left the hospital with more questions than I came in with. Crutches under my arms, a boot on my left leg, and a fresh file of medical records that said I was perfectly healthy. Perfectly normal. I wasn't sure what to do with that. My condition, the one I'd lived with since before I could remember, was gone. Or, according to every doctor involved, it had never been there in the first place. There was no scar tissue, no record, no childhood files, nothing but a blank space where my whole life had supposedly existed. I didn't know if I was furious or relieved. Maybe both. Caleb picked me up from the hospital. Yeah, same Caleb from middle school. The one who first called me Truffle Pig. Now he was a family man, 3 kids, and the kind of guy who kept a folding chair and jumper cables in the back of his truck, just in case. He helped me into the passenger seat, folded my crutches, and drove with one hand on the wheel and the other on a to-go coffee. You sure you're okay? He asked. I'm good, I said, staring out the window. Leg will heal. No, I mean in there. He tapped his chest. I know things have been rough since your mom passed. I nodded. Yeah, that's not it though. I told him everything about the scans, the doctor, the lack of medical history. I told him how it felt like my entire identity was unraveling. He whistled low, turning down the radio. That's wild, he said. But maybe it's a blessing, right? A second shot. Sure, I said. If I knew how to start. He dropped me at home and offered to carry my bags in, but I told him I had it. The cast was manageable. I just needed time and space to figure things out. The apartment was still mostly how I left it before the crash. A stack of unopened mail. A half-wilted houseplant on the kitchen table. Boxes I hadn't sorted since Mom died. I stared at the blender on the counter. The same one I'd used for years, to liquefy every meal, every snack, every sip. I grabbed it, unplugged it, and shoved it deep into the bottom cabinet. Then I grabbed my keys and limped to the grocery store. I didn't know what to buy, what people bought when they weren't afraid of food. I wandered the aisles like I was walking through a museum of forbidden artifacts. Boxes of cereal. Shiny red apples. Loaves of fresh bread. My heart started pounding when I reached the dairy section. I picked up a small cup of vanilla yogurt. Then a cucumber. Then, after a long pause, a pint of chocolate ice cream. It felt like shoplifting. Back home, I called Caleb and asked if he'd hang around while I tried eating for the first time. He agreed without hesitation. Think of it like a first driving lesson, he joked. I'm just here in case you hit a mailbox. We sat at the table in silence. I peeled the lid off the yogurt and grabbed a spoon from the drawer. It was one of the old ones, tarnished silver, part of a mismatched set from Mom's kitchen. I dipped it, brought it up, and just stared at it. You all right? Caleb asked. Just nervous. That's normal, he said. Try to enjoy it. I took a breath, closed my eyes, and placed the spoon on my tongue. Sweet. Cool. Creamy. Then I tilted my head back and let it slide down my throat. The sensation was foreign. Like testing out a new muscle. My throat spasmed slightly, but it didn't lock up. It didn't reject it. I swallowed. It hurt a little, but it worked. A cough escaped my lips, but I waved Caleb off. I'm fine, I said hoarsely. Just surprised. He gave me a thumbs up. Try the ice cream next. I did. It was harder, thicker, colder. But it went down. Over the next hour, I experimented like a scientist. A spoon of yogurt. A melted chunk of ice cream. A sliver of cucumber, peeled and mushed with a fork. Everything felt strange, but thrilling, until a bit of cucumber skin caught in my throat. I gagged, gasped, and slapped the table. Caleb jumped up and gave me a few sharp hits on the back. The piece dislodged. We called it a night. That evening, as I sat propped up in bed with a heating pad on my throat, I pulled out a few boxes of Mom's old things. Letters, photos, scribbled recipes. In most of the pictures, I had her hair, blonde and wispy. But in some of the older ones, I was clearly different. Brown hair, brown eyes. At first, I thought maybe I had a sibling. But the notes on the back said otherwise. Jasper, age 1. Still fussy. Jasper's first bottle. There was even one where she was breastfeeding me, and another not long after where she was bandaged across the shoulder, like she'd been hurt. The timing felt off, but I let the questions sit. My throat hurt, and I was exhausted. The next day, I tried again. yogurt, ice cream, then mashed potatoes. It was slow, but manageable. That night, I took a chance on something solid. A single, roasted peanut. I held it between my fingers, rolled it in my palm, then popped it in and bit down. The crunch echoed through my jaw, through my skull. It was so loud, so satisfying, I nearly cried. I chewed and chewed and chewed until the texture was gone, then swallowed. No choking, no panic, just a warm tingling in my chest. I grabbed another, then another. Within an hour, I'd eaten the whole bag. I sat in my kitchen, peanut shells scattered like confetti, while reruns of Friends played quietly in the background. But I wasn't listening. All I could hear was the crunch, sweet, holy crunch, ringing in my ears. I didn't sleep that night. Not out of fear. Out of something else. Something I didn't have a word for yet. Not joy. Not adrenaline. It was like I'd been handed a new body, or maybe I'd been living in the wrong one this whole time. The next morning, I woke up before sunrise and made myself breakfast for the first time in my life. Toast. Just toast. I stared at the glowing coils inside the toaster like I was watching a sacred ritual. When the slices popped up, golden and crisp, I didn't bother with butter or jam. I just took a bite. The sound. The warmth. The texture. It hit me so hard I had to sit down. I chewed slowly, reverently, until the edges went soft and the bread disappeared down my throat. No pain. No panic. Just food. I spent the rest of the day eating in fragments. Crackers. Boiled eggs. Half a banana. Each bite felt like a prayer. But something else started happening too. With every new flavor, I felt sharper. Hungrier, not for food, but for understanding. It started when I found the name McClure scribbled on one of Mom's old notebooks. No first name. Just the last. Repeated. Again and again. It didn't belong to any teacher or doctor I remembered. So I did what any curious adult with an internet connection would do. I Googled it. And it came up, buried beneath hospital records, municipal listings, and real estate transfers. The name Dr. Vernon McClure, a retired otolaryngologist in Southern Oregon. I clicked on the link and found an old photo. Gray beard, lab coat, small tired smile. He'd specialized in esophageal disorders before stepping away from medicine in the mid-2000s. And he'd once worked for a company called Nutricend Labs. I'd never heard of them. But the second I typed that name in, the internet pushed back. The main site redirected to a dead page. News articles had been scrubbed or blurred. But a few forum posts from almost a decade ago still lingered, fragments of conspiracy threads and whistleblower claims. The phrases jumped out at me. Unauthorized trials on minors. Reclassified as nutritional studies to bypass FDA scrutiny. Subject retention enforced by private guardianship. None of it was clear, but I had the gut-deep feeling it was all connected. That evening, I heard a knock at the door. Not a friendly tap. Not an Amazon package thud. This was heavy. Measured. I pulled the curtain back and froze. A woman stood on my porch. Mid-50s. Tired eyes. Neatly combed gray hair. She wore a red windbreaker and black slacks. No smile. No clipboard. She wasn't a stranger. I'd seen her before. Only once, years ago, at the edge of my memory. I unlocked the door but didn't open it all the way. "Can I help you?" I asked. She hesitated. Her voice was soft, but deliberate. "Jasper, I know this is going to sound strange, but I need to ask you something important." I didn't respond. She continued. "Do you remember a house with blue shutters? A tree with a swing? A boy named Micah?" I stared at her. My throat felt tight. "I think you have the wrong person," I said. Her eyes dropped to the ground. I was afraid of that. Then she looked back up. "You were taken from that house when you were 5. That boy? He was your brother." I opened the door wider. "Excuse me. My name is Lorna," she said. "I used to work for Nutricend. I was your nurse, back when you were part of the program." 100 questions rushed forward, but my voice cracked before any of them could form. "What program?" I asked. She shifted her weight, like she'd been waiting years to say what came next. There were experiments. Long-term sensory deprivation. Nutritional conditioning. Genetic suppression through dietary manipulation. You weren't the only one, but you were the youngest who survived it. I shook my head. "No, that's not real. I had achalasia. I've always had it." "No, Jasper. You were made to believe you did." I backed away. "My mother wasn't your biological mother. She was assigned as your caretaker after the shutdown. She wasn't part of it. She loved you. But she also signed paperwork that forced her silence. I couldn't breathe. Every inch of my body felt wrong, like my skin didn't fit. I wanted to slam the door shut, but something made me stop. I stepped outside. Why now? I asked. Why are you telling me this now? Because you're eating again. Which means the block has worn off. Which means others might come looking. She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a photograph. 2 boys, maybe 5 or 6. One with a crooked smile and missing front teeth. The other, me, sitting stiffly on a porch swing. The background, blue shutters. The tree. Just like she said. Your name wasn't Jasper, she whispered. It was Eli. That night, I couldn't sleep. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by empty plates and questions I couldn't begin to answer. Who was I? What had they done to me? And what would happen next, now that I could taste again? For the next 2 days, I didn't leave my apartment. I didn't eat. Not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. Every bite now carried weight. History. Memory. And something darker. I kept the envelope Lorna gave me on my nightstand. I must have stared at that photo 100 times, me and Micah. His hand on my shoulder. My expression, tense, like I didn't want to be there. Why couldn't I remember him? Why couldn't I remember any of it? The tree. The swing. The house with blue shutters. It was all foggy, like a dream I wasn't invited to. And then, on the 3rd morning, something strange happened. The smell. It came from beneath the floorboards in the kitchen. At first, it was faint, like something sour, left too long in the trash. But by noon, it had bloomed into something worse. Rancid. Rotting. Chemical. I pulled the trash, checked the fridge, even cleaned under the stove. But nothing fixed it. It was coming from underneath. I pried up a loose panel near the sink. The crawl space beneath the apartment was narrow, barely enough room to slide your arm in. But when I held a flashlight to the crack, I saw something that made my breath catch. A plastic container. Gray. Duct taped shut. I didn't touch it. Not right away. Instead, I called Caleb. Hey, I said when he picked up. Remember when I said I might need help figuring things out? Yeah, I need you to come over. We met at my kitchen table, just like old times. Only this time, I wasn't sipping thickened juice. I had a real cup of coffee in front of me. I didn't touch it. I told him everything. About Lorna. About the picture. About the smell. When I mentioned the box beneath the floor, he went quiet. You want me to get it? He asked. No, I said. We'll do it together. It took us 20 minutes to pry open the crawl space enough to slide a small crowbar in. When we finally got the container out, it was heavier than expected, maybe 20 pounds. Tightly sealed. Caleb stood behind me as I peeled away the tape. Inside were dozens of small vials. Each one labeled with a number and a date. Each one filled with a cloudy white substance. And beneath them, a folder. Yellowed, water-stained. It said Subject 041, Eli McClure on the front. That name again. Not Jasper. Eli. Caleb stared over my shoulder as I flipped through the documents. Photos. Charts. Blood work. Notes like. Subject responds positively to texture reintroduction. Sees flavor stimulation immediately. Memory disruption holding. Maternal bonds simulated successfully. Do not exceed 2 grams per week. Increased hunger will trigger baseline return. The last page had only 2 words, scrawled in red ink. Not done. I don't get it, Caleb said. What is this? It's me, I whispered. It's what they did to me. We sat in silence for a long time. Finally, he spoke. So what now? That was the question, wasn't it? What do you do when your entire life, your memories, your illness, your identity turns out to be a controlled experiment? I wasn't sick. I was conditioned. The hunger, the pain, the swallowing reflex, all of it had been regulated, trained, suppressed. And now, it was coming undone. I need to find the house, I said. The one with the blue shutters? I nodded. If I can find it, maybe I can remember the rest. That night, I lay awake, listening to my own breathing. My tongue felt different now, like it was alive in a way it had never been. More aware. I could feel the texture of the air, the taste of the dust. Everything felt amplified. I dreamed of metal tables, white coats. My mother, not the one who raised me, but another, weeping behind glass. I woke up sweating. Something wasn't right. The apartment felt wrong, smaller. I grabbed the photo again. The tree, the shutters. And then I remembered something. Not a moment. A scent. Mulberries. The tree had mulberries. Not a detail I could have made up. Not a scent I ever associated with my adult life. And just like that, I knew where to look. The next morning, I packed a bag and left the apartment. I didn't tell Caleb. I didn't want to drag him any deeper. The trip took 4 hours by bus, 2 by foot. The town was a ghost now. No signposts. Overgrown yards. Houses with boards instead of windows. But eventually, I found it. The house with the blue shutters. Half collapsed. Smothered in vines. But still standing. And out front, the tree. Bent low, heavy with dark berries. I walked up the gravel path, heart pounding. Inside, the house was ruined. Floorboards warped. Wallpaper peeling. But some of the furniture remained. A couch. A crib. A child's shoe split down the middle. Then I saw the back room. And in that room, written across the wall in chalk, were dozens of names. Eli. Micah. Ruth. James. Subject 041. Subject 042. Subject 043. Some were crossed out. Some had check marks. Mine didn't. I stepped closer. And that's when I heard it. A sound behind me. Soft. Wet. I turned. Someone stood in the hallway. Not Caleb. Not Lorna. A child, thin, quiet, eyes wide. He stared at me like I was a ghost. Then he opened his mouth and whispered a single word. Eli. I couldn't move. The boy in the hallway didn't look real. He looked like memory, not mine, but someone else's. His eyes were sunken, his cheeks hollow. Bare feet. Dirt-smudged hands. A faint tremble in his frame, like the house itself was shaking beneath him. He whispered again. Eli. I stepped forward, slowly. Who are you? He flinched. Then, it's me. Micah. The name crashed into me like a wave. Micah. The boy from the photo. My brother. The one I'd somehow forgotten. He looked about 10. But that couldn't be right. If I was 22, he should have been older, taller. A man by now. I blinked. How? His face twisted. You left. I didn't. You stopped eating, he said quietly. And they let you go. They told me it meant you failed. That you weren't strong enough. He stepped into the light. That's when I saw the marks. Faint, pale scars across his jaw. Circular indents along his forearms. Tracks, like someone had sewn or bolted something into him and then removed it. They kept me, he said. They said I still had potential. I reached out, but he pulled back. Don't, he said. You'll ruin it. Ruin what? The hunger. My stomach turned. What did they do to us, Micah? He smiled, not cruelly, but emptily. They taught us control, not of others, of ourselves. He looked down at my hands, my arms, my chest. You're eating now, aren't you? I didn't answer. He nodded anyway. That's how it begins. I stepped back. This isn't right. You're not supposed to be here. You're a child. I never stopped, he said. I never resisted. I let it happen. I let it shape me. Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't leave you, I said. I didn't know you existed. He blinked slowly. But I knew you. He turned toward the hallway. His small hand pointed to the far door. Do you want to see what they left behind? I should have run. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, to pretend this house, this place, this version of myself never existed. But I followed him. Down the hallway. Past crumbling photos. Broken toys. Names scratched into drywall. He stopped at a door. Pushed it open. Inside, a cold storage unit. Metal walls. Rusted shelves. A dozen vials sat in a tray of melted ice, just like the ones I'd found beneath my kitchen floor. On the wall above them, Polaroids. Photos of kids. Infants. Teens. Some smiling. Some sedated. All labeled by number. I scanned the wall and found mine. 041, Eli McClure. I pulled it down. Stared at the boy in the photo. Blank eyes. Chin stained with something white and thick. A feeding tube taped to his cheek. Why? I asked aloud. Why would anyone do this? Micah stepped beside me. To see what would happen when we stopped being human. He reached for one of the vials. Popped the cap. Sniffed. Then drank. His body shuddered. Then went still. I took a step back. Micah. He turned. His eyes weren't his anymore. They were glassy. Black around the edges. He opened his mouth. His teeth, some of them were wrong. Sharper. Warped. Do you feel it? He said, voice low. The craving. I shook my head. No. He smiled wider. You will. I ran. Out of the room. Through the hallway. Past the chalk wall. Out the door. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until my lungs burned and my vision blurred. I don't remember how I got back to the bus station. Or how I paid. Or what day it was. All I know is I woke up on my couch 2 days later, covered in sweat, stomach twisted in knots. I stumbled to the kitchen, opened the fridge. Everything was gone. I don't mean spoiled, I mean gone. The shelves were empty. The sink was filled with broken dishes. My hands were cut, my throat raw. I'd eaten something, and I didn't remember doing it. A week passed, then another. I tried to call Caleb. No answer. I visited his house. Gone. No sign of him. No forwarding address. Like he'd vanished. A few nights later, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, Phase 2 begins when hunger overtakes fear. There was no signature. Only a number, 042. Now I sit in silence. Every night, listening to the sound of my own stomach. It's louder now. More insistent. I've tried to fight it. But yesterday, I found myself walking into a butcher shop. I wasn't even hungry. But I stared at the display case, organs, bones, fat, and I felt something I've never felt before. Not revulsion. Not curiosity. Recognition. I don't know what they turned me into. I don't know what they're waiting for. But I know this. They're still out there. Micah, Lorna, the ones who watched, who documented, who changed us. And one day, when the hunger fully returns, I won't be looking for answers. I'll be looking for them.